Welcome to an exciting special episode of Forward Live. No, this is not Freology Friday because my partner in crime, Aaron Tomlinson, is still on vacation. So he's resting, relaxing, getting a tan, getting fed, all of that good stuff. And so I'm happy for Aaron, to be able to take this time off. But in the meantime, yeah, listen, I want to give a quick shout out to my friends Daryl Carlson and Patrick Jubert for co-hosting with me last week. Thanks to Jimmy Ligon for showing up and showing out for us. Always good to have Jimmy in the mix. But one of the things that I thought about is how do we grow? How do we grow? And I thought about this in the context of my own spirituality because many of you know, and I'm going to say this once, and I'm not going to dwell on this because this is not a referendum on my spirituality or anyone else's, but how I became an atheist. And people ask, how did you wind up going from being a Christian pastor, a bishop, an apostle, an ecumenical leader, to being an atheist? It just seemed like a really tremendous leap. And my response to anyone who asks me that is I found a better explanation. A better explanation is when you are able to entertain a thought different than what you accept to be true or what you accept or what you believe or whatever, and then you basically say, okay, this is a better explanation. And so for me, in my walk through Christianity, and let me do this real quick because what I'm drinking tonight is the Velvet Devil. And I chose that specifically because some people think I'm the devil or I'm an agent of the devil or something like that. So I'm going to pour myself a sizable portion of this as I walk through my talk. So again, as I walk through Christianity, I got ordained, if you will, as like an apostolic slash Pentecostal pastor or a minister, an associate pastor, and then kind of worked through that and went from that to being more word of faith, and then being in what they call the grace movement, to being inclusionist, to being universalist, to ultimately being atheist. And so that's sort of my spiritual journey in a nutshell, right? And each one of those steps that I went through, each one of those milestones that I encountered, it all had to do with a better explanation. There was a better explanation than the one that I had prior. And when you have superior information displaces inferior information or displaces older information. So one thing I need to do real quick while and so one of the things I'd like to know is what are you guys doing on a Friday night? What are you up to on a Friday night? Put it in the chat. Are you getting your drink on? You getting your smoke on? Getting your freak on? What are you doing on a Friday night? I'm really curious. But let me do this real quick because I need to share. And it looks like I had a lot of messages in Facebook, but I'm trying to share this video. So bear with me for just a moment while I do this. Boom. Copy link. And then I will share that link. Okay. So each step on my Christian journey required better information. It was a better data set, a better grouping, a better understanding than what I had. And contrary to popular belief, I didn't come to the whole atheist conclusion overnight. This was a process. And I would say that this process was probably 6 to 7 years long. It was basically it started when I wrote the book Deconstructing Religion. And when I wrote that book, that kind of opened my eyes to some things, and it made me really drill down into what I knew. Now, here's the thing, and I said this is not going to be a referendum on religion, because this applies to a whole bunch of things. Because, for example, right now in my profession, I work in cloud computing. That's what I specialize in. And so basically the objective is moving customer data workloads from their on-premise data centers or leased data centers to the public cloud. And there are a lot of reasons, good reasons, for going to the public cloud. One is, scalability, and another thing is future proofing, because the cloud is constantly being refreshed, constantly being advanced as far as the state of the art, the technology. So it's getting better. It gets better daily, literally daily. And so you're able to take advantage of these newer technologies, whereas before, if you had a data center or if you were leasing or buying equipment, you were locked into that equipment for a specific period of time. If you're leasing, it's for the duration of the lease. If you're buying, it's until that equipment becomes fully amortized before it can be replaced or refreshed, right? So the whole premise of cloud computing is that it is a better interpretation of the data center model than what had been presented to corporate America. So now the rush is to get into the cloud from data centers so that you can take advantage of the economies of scale that the cloud affords. Another one is, a little over a year ago, almost 2 years ago, I bought an electric car. I bought a Tesla, and and I'm going to tell you something. If you've never driven a Tesla, let me tell you something. This is driving the fucking future, and here's the proof of it. Before Tesla, nobody really gave a shit about an electric car. The best electric car prior to that was General Motors EV1, which they didn't sell to anyone. They leased it. And when the leases were up, they brought the cars back and they destroyed them, like the Chrysler turbine cars. Look that one up. That I'm not going to get into that obscure reference. But what happened was is that Tesla came along, and it made with the Model S, it made the electric car sexy, it made it desirable, and it got rid of the range anxiety, because now you have an electric car that can go at least 300 miles on a charge. It was a game changer. And as a result, literally every manufacturer, every automobile manufacturer in the world is scrambling to produce electric cars. And there are some that are doing it better than others. Like, for example, Mercedes-Benz and the Volkswagen Group, for example, they're all over it. I mean, basically, they have an electric variant of just about everything that they sell. You know, but if it weren't for Tesla, that wouldn't happen, because Tesla was a better interpretation of the automobile, and it forced every manufacturer to adapt. And that's what a better explanation does, is it forces you to rethink whatever it is that you hold to be true, or whatever you hold dear, whatever is core to you or central to you. And this is the point that I'm getting at, is a lot of people can't receive the better explanation because they're galvanized into a way of thinking. And this is, I could really go deep into this, but when you're thinking, first of all, not everybody thinks. That's the first thing. Good point to take a drink. Not everybody thinks. Most people think that they think, but in reality they don't. And the proof of that is that when you're thinking is an analytical, heuristic process. It's holistic. It's It's like analytics, it's like data processing, except it's not, because it's based on fuzzy logic. And logic and reason come into play, but there's also the emotional content, right? And all of these things come into play when you're thinking. But thinking is the ability to analyze multiple concepts, multiple streams of information, and utilize that to make some make some conclusion from that. And the reality is that most people are conscious. They're awake. And by awake, I mean they're awake in the biological sense, not necessarily in the metaphysical sense or in the spiritual sense, but in the strict biological sense, they're awake. And so there are some people that conflate consciousness with thought, and that's not really a good comparison, because the reality is that not everyone who is awake is thinking. And then to take thinking a step further, when you go from mere thinking to critical thinking, now critical thinking is like basically you're juxtaposing two or more ideas together, and you're looking at the merits, the benefits, the pros and cons, the benefits and the liabilities of two different concepts or multiple concepts, and you're basically plowing through this. And here's the interesting thing, that when you're actually doing critical thinking, you're doing it without cognitive dissonance, which that's another topic in and of itself. But basically, you're really processing things relative to another thing, if you get that. So you have people who are conscious, you have people who are thinking, and then you have people who are critical thinkers. Critical thinkers, I think, represent probably the smallest minority of people in this country and in the world. Most people are not critical thinkers. And I think part of the problem with that is how educational systems are set up, because I think that critical thinking is a discipline that can be taught. It's not something that's innate. Like for example, IQ. IQ is innate. There are some people that have higher IQs than others. EQ, emotional quotient, that is innate. It's basically you either have it or you don't, right? And that's basically the raw material, your ability to process. It's not your actual processing. Because there are some people that have high IQs but low degree of education, and so someone with a higher degree of education but a lower IQ can often accomplish greater things. But again, what it comes down to is the explanation. What do you understand about a thing? I could go in so many different directions. Like for example, with music, and let's just talk about American music, because you had bluegrass, and you had chamber music and things like that, and then from that. There's some influence of the blues and classical music, and from that comes jazz, and then jazz has its derivatives, most notably bebop, and bebop gives birth to rock and roll and rhythm and blues, and these genres begin to spin off into things like rockabilly and hip hop and all of that, and on and on and on. But every one of these advancements in music came from a better understanding of music theory, of music practice, right? So again, a better explanation is something that displaces a prior explanation. And why is this so important? Because I say that we are now in the information age. Matter of fact, I'll take that a step further. We're actually post information age, and now we're in the age of analytics. We're in the age of analytics. I was watching football the other night, and basically, let's see who was playing. Now I can't remember who was playing, but anyway, one team was kicking a field goal, and the commentator said, "Well, analytics say that kicking a field goal from this distance is a bad idea," and they gave a percentage, and I think it was like 6% that the analytics said it was a 6% chance that the kicker would make the field goal, and the kicker actually kicked it and made the field goal. It was a 62-yard field goal. So the thing is, people are really hung up on analytics. They're looking at how, like talking about football, for example, how does a quarterback receiver combo work against a particular zone coverage, right? Or how do these combinations work against man coverage, or how do they work against double coverage, and all of these different things. And so analytics crunches the numbers and says, okay, based on all of this data, we come up with a probability of this percent that this play will work. Okay, so we're actually in the analytics era. We're not in the information era anymore. We're in the analytics era, and analytics is very important because analytics gives rise to what they call machine learning and also artificial intelligence, right? So we think of things like ChatGPT and Bing, right? And these artificial intelligence tools, basically, they are taught through machine learning about different subjects and how the interplay between different subjects. If you think about it, think about Venn diagrams. Where you have like circles and they overlap, and that's where you find a converging zone. Think of ChatGPT or Bing as massively scalable Venn diagrams, and so they're converging all of these different things, and then they have a result that's in the convergence zone that says this is what it is based on the convergence of all of this data. And so this makes a lot of things possible, like again, go back to my car, the Tesla. It has what they call full self-driving. Now, it's one of these things, kids don't try this at home because it works pretty good. I mean, it's a really cool parlor trick. Nothing will freak out your passengers more than you getting into your Tesla and hitting a button, and taking your hands off the wheel, and the steering wheel just and your car starts cruising away, right? Well, all of that's possible through analytics. And so one of the things that the car does, the car is constantly collecting what they call telemetry, or telematics from its driving. And all of this is constantly being reported up to the Tesla mothership via 5G connection. And and so based on all of this, the model for the self-driving gets better over time. Like I have this other feature, is called Smart Summon. And the Smart Summon to me is like the coolest parlor trick, because if you're within, I think, 700 feet of your car, and it's a clear day and there's not a whole lot going on, you can actually tell your car, like you can be at the door of the mall and have your car come to you. It's really, really cool. And there's artificial intelligence involved in that because it's constantly learning how to get better at it as it goes along, right? So, anyway, all of that's possible because of better information. It's a better understanding of things. And when you have a better understanding, what happens is that something you understood before now is displaced by something you understand now. it- how can I say this? Like, for example, investing. Investing. It used to be you would read the Wall Street Journal and you look at the ticker reports and you look at the stock tables and you would use this to basically gather some data and plot it over time and you say, okay, I think the stock is going to move this way or that way. Now you have an app. There are apps like Stash. I like Stash that where you can actually look at Stash and make some predictions. You can do some modeling with stock prices and with different stocks with different options, and it will make you a better investor. Well, not necessarily a better investor. Because there's still a benefit to learning the analog way of doing things because then you really understand what's going on under the hood. But what the app does is it allows you to react quicker because now you have better tools. You have a better explanation of the stock market in the palm of your hand. Does that make sense? Good time for a drink. So, one of the things that I want you to hear, and I hope that you process this, and I hope that this is a better explanation for you because what some people will do is they'll say, "Man, we had it good back then," or "Things were better off back then," or "Life was better back then." Whatever the explanation is, right? And and let me and again, because I'm a car buff, let me use cars as an example, right? Because people will say, "Oh, well, the golden era of the car was in that period like between 1964 and 1971." When you had big cubic inches and big horsepower and you had all these muscle cars and all of that. Listen, you can buy a Honda Civic today that will outrun most muscle cars from the 60s and it gets 30 miles per gallon. Or you can buy an electric car, and I'm not to pick on Tesla, but you can get a Hyundai EV6 or EV5, or you can get a Volkswagen ID or a Mustang Mach-E. There are a whole bunch of electric cars out there, but all of them, 100% of these electric cars will absolutely smoke the baddest of the muscle cars of the 60s because that technology is superior. The new technology is superior to the old technology because back then those cars, yeah, they could go real fast and everything, but they got like 6 miles per gallon. They weren't reliable, you know. But now it's like basically you have an electric car that'll run for a 500,000 miles, and it'll be faster, it'll be more efficient, it'll be more luxurious. All insert more of whatever here. Of course, it won't have the visceral experience, the whole rumbling of a big V8 under your feet. No, you're not going to get that. But guess what? By all of the measurable metrics that a car can be measured by, quantified by, the electric car is vastly superior. And matter of fact, even the gas cars today are vastly superior to anything that was produced back then. There's not a single car that can hold a candle to anything out here now. It's just not. And that's because better technology is a better explanation. Better information is a better explanation. Better analytics is a better explanation. And you can say what you want about Amazon, but you can go on Amazon and you can order something and oftentimes have it the same day. And it comes from, I don't know, from wherever. But the thing is that the supply chain, Amazon has optimized this to the point where you can pretty much get whatever you want, literally whatever you want, delivered to your doorstep. You don't have to go to the supermarket. You don't have to go to the department store. You don't have to go to the mall. It's a better explanation. Now, you could argue that maybe it's not a better experience because some people say, well, I miss the socialness of going to the mall or whatever, right? And yeah, there's some, something to be said for all of that. But the reality is that it's a better explanation. Have you ever gone to like your local liquor store and really looked at like the variety of beer? The variety of beer is made possible by cloud computing, by standard software, by algorithms that basically you could scan social media and whittle down preferences and say based on all of this I should make a batch of this particular IPA. And yeah, I'm picking on IPAs because if you go to most liquor stores and you look at the beer varieties, most of them are IPAs now. That's the flavor of the month, if you will. But that's because there are algorithms, there's standard software, there are processes that all of these things together comprise a better explanation. And so now just the fact that you can have all these different beers and through Amazon you can get it delivered directly to your house. Now it's like, I mean, we live in the golden age of retail. And I know some people don't want to dig, they don't want to accept that because they'll think of the golden age of retails, Macy's, Bloomingdale, Dayton Hudson, all of these things. But no, I mean honestly, everything that you had to go running around town for can be delivered to your doorstep, and that's really fantastic. But back to religion for just a minute. And this is where I think that this is going to help a lot of people. Don't let information tell you what to think. Information is a tool. It's not, let me put it this way. Use your decision making faculty to assess, aggregate, and collate data to make better decisions. But don't let the data drive you. Because one of the things is that information, for as good as it is, it can't wholly predict human behavior. Matter of fact, even us in our analog way of thinking, we can't predict human behavior. But there are some times when you can run contrary to information, and again, Thursday night football and this long kick. No, it wasn't. It wasn't Thursday night. It was Monday night. Monday night football. That basically the analytics said that this kick shouldn't be attempted, but the coaches said, "Hey, I'm confident in our spot. I'm confident in the kicker, and I'm confident that the defense can't defend against this. I'm going to kick it." They kicked it and was successful. So sometimes you have to look at the data and know by your gut when is a good time to run contrary to the data because there are times for that, and this is not the forum for that. There's a whole process to that. I have my thoughts on it, and one day I'll share them, but this isn't the forum for that. But there are going to be times when you're going to make decisions against the data, right? But let the data be a tool. Let the data serve you, not vice versa, right? Because at the end of the day, this is why people talk about they're afraid of AI, artificial intelligence. I'm not afraid of AI, as long as we set it up so that AI serves us and not we serving it. That there's logic that has to be built into the model that said, or I don't know, to use a Star Trek term, a prime directive, and that this directive has to be sacrosanct. It has to be something that's built into every AI model that says that these are the constraints that I won't violate, right? Because, you know, let me give you an example where progress is not always progress, right? Anybody who knows me knows that I hate self checkout. I absolutely loathe self checkout. First of all, because it puts too much work on me. I'm not in the store to work, I'm in there to buy shit. And so I want the people who are paid to work, right? But there's something more altruistic in me, and that is that when I use self checkout, I'm contributing to the demise of someone's job. Now they'll say, "Oh no, Derek, these jobs they get moved around. A cashier will get moved um, into a warehouse or into another job." But the reality is that these things actually do replace jobs, and they don't reduce cost, they increase profit, because now the money that would have to be paid to an employee can now be returned to shareholders as dividends. And to me, this whole American capitalist way of profits over everything else is absolutely sickening. And that's me. But that's one of those areas where progress doesn't necessarily mean progress, because yes, this technology is great. You can go up there, scan your own stuff, and here's the thing: if you go out and read social media, it's funny because a lot of people say that, well, if I'm going to be treated as an employee, I'm going to get the employee discount. And so they've learned to game the self checkout machines, so they can get their extra discount. So anyway, that's pretty much what I had for tonight. Let me do this. I'm gonna throw the uh, the chat link out here in case anybody wants to join in. You can join in. You can click this link and you'll go straight to the green room. And if you have something that you want to say about this, feel free. You know what they say: if you feel froggy, leap. Nothing between me and you except fear and atmosphere, as we would say. So feel free to join in. So I'll hang out for a minute and drink wine in your presence while some of you decide whether or not you want to join in. And you may agree with me. And then again, you may not agree with me. Um, but here's the thing: that basically, no matter what, the way to grow, the way to advance yourself intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, you have to be able to entertain another idea, another paradigm, another explanation, and be also prepared to accept that what may be, or that this other explanation might be superior to what you know. And again, this is how I've grown. Like another thing that I fell in love with in my spiritual journey is quantum physics. And with quantum physics, basically the premise behind it is that the mere fact of observing a quantum phenomenon changes its outcome. In other words, you can know its position but not its velocity, or you can know its velocity but not its position. You can't know both. And one person observing will have a different result than another person observing, and that kind of is manifested in what they call the double slit experiment. And I would encourage you to look that up, right? Because that's a simple understanding of quantum physics. Also, we had standard like the periodic table of elements, right? The periodic table of elements gave the weight and the magnitude of every known atomic structure, and then in the turn of the 20th century, we got the Standard Model of quantum physics, which was superior to the periodic table in that we're able to quantify subatomic particles, right? The problem with the Standard Model, though, is that the Standard Model does not account for gravity, whereas Newtonian physics, Einstein's general relativity or special relativity model, that they all account for gravity, but the Standard Model of quantum physics cannot. It's like when you throw gravity in there as a construct, the Standard Model gets totally thrown into disarray. So now what there is people are looking for what they call the unified theory of everything. And basically, there are multiple candidates of what the unified theory of everything may be. And the most, let's say the most popular is what they call M theory or string theory. And string theory basically says that everything is comprised of either open or closed strings, and that when these strings are plucked at different frequencies, they manifest into different waves, particles, and other up to different atomic structures. No one has ever observed a string. No one knows what a string looks like. No one has ever seen a string. In fact, string theory is totally theoretical at this point. However, it's mathematically modelable. And so you can run numbers through string theory equations, and you'll get repeatable results. Which anytime you get a repeatable result, it says that there's some substance to this, even though we haven't seen it yet. But again, when in the late 1800s, the late 19th century, no one knew what a lepton or a boson, what a muon was. No one knew. Those things didn't exist. We knew what protons, neutrons, and electrons were, but we didn't know what the subatomic particles were, right? So as we get better information, as we get better explanations, we get a greater ability to further bifurcate these different subatomic particles. So let's see here. Let's see. There's some comments here. John McGuire says, Derek, the problem is sacrosanct to whom? Of any rules AI may not agree with our interpretation of the rules. And yeah, that's right. If AI becomes sentient, as one scientist from Google asserted that it is, if it's sentient, then that means it could overrun its ability to be contained and then be able to learn outside of its constraints. Yeah, that is a potential problem, but right now I don't think that's such a big deal, because right now I think we have control over the models, right? So I get your point, John. I'm not in complete agreement with that. I see the possibility, but anyway, let's see. David Young, he says, I thought maybe you were a secret agent with Bond's car. Yeah, because I did that parlor trick. We had lunch one day, and I showed the guys how the car could be summoned, and it's a great parlor trick. But again, the whole thing with the electric car, the electric car is a better explanation or a better expression of the automobile. And the proof of that is that everybody's scrambling to build an electric car now. And that's what Tesla did. You can love or hate Elon Musk. I personally, I think he's, batshit crazy, but the thing is that Tesla is a brilliant concept. Can't dispute that. So, anybody else? Is there anybody that wants to jump on? Anybody who wants to say, "Hey, Derek, great job," or "Hey, Derek, you're an asshole"? Anybody? Because that's what that link is for. You're more than welcome to join in. As I used to say in talk radio, exercise finger dexterity to dial this number and join in. So you can exercise finger dexterity on your mouse, click in, join in. So let me ask you this in closing, right? And I'd like to see this in the chat in the comments. What are some of the better explanations of things that you had? Like let's talk about this for a second. Like let's talk about like psychic phenomenon or paranormal phenomenon. And people will say, okay, well, people have these experiences, right? Well, I think that I don't discount anybody's experience, first of all. But I also say that in order for an experience to be universally accepted, that it has to have some repeatability. In other words, it has to be diffuse over multiple people and in multiple situations. Otherwise, it may be a one-off, or it may be just something that's concocted. It might be something in one's own mind. But when it happens in multiple forums with multiple people, well, now you have to give some credibility to it. But what I'm getting at is there are certain concepts in the human psyche. We talk about the Kundalini, and we talk about third eye and the pineal gland, and all of these different things. We talk about the gut being a second brain, and all of these things. We're also understanding that our understanding of the human brain is very limited, and that the human brain is much more capable than what we know it to be. So right now we don't have a good explanation for a lot of these things, for ESP, for psychic phenomena, for telekinesis, all of these different things, remote viewing. We kind of look at that. Okay, this is an interesting thing. We chalk it up to something supernatural, and that's it. But I believe that just like how we didn't know what bosons, leptons, muons were at the turn of the 20th century, that there is going to come a time when we're going to understand what triggers telekinesis, or remote viewing, or other psychic phenomena. And right now we chalk all of that up to the mystical. We chalk it up to to something supernatural. But I think that given a sufficiently long timeline, that there will be an explanation for pretty much everything if we don't destroy each other before that. I think that the things that my children and grandchildren will see will be absolutely mind blowing to me. I won't be here to see it. Hopefully a part of my energy will be able to perceive it. But as far as me as a presence in the earth, a lot of the stuff I'm going to miss. A lot of the stuff you're going to miss. If you're over 50 years old, you're probably going to miss a lot of this. But I do believe that, again, barring whether or not humanity actually survives another 50 to 100 years, I think that we're going to see some really phenomenal things come out of physiology, kinesiology, the science of the mind, and all of that it's just going to be absolutely mind blowing. But I would like to see what your particular experiences with a better explanation are. What happened when you were faced with a new data set that ultimately displaced what you thought or knew or believed prior to? Put that in the comments. I would love to hear about it. I would love to hear about it. Whatever your better explanation is, I'd love to know, because hey, I'm learning. I'm growing. And the reality is that we can all learn from and grow through each other, right? Many of you out here who are watching this right now, I've learned things from you. I've grown through you because of you. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful. Some of you have given me a better explanation. There were some people like I have a friend, Simon Yap, who's an ex-pastor over in Malaysia, and Simon had a better understanding about end times prophecy. And it was to the point where Simon and I had actually fallen out for a year because he got upset with me because I was preaching something that he thought I should know better. And so when we were reconciled, I said, let me listen to what Simon is saying instead of just kind of coming to my own conclusion. And when I listened, I found out he had a better explanation. And I learned and I grew. And then there were people who there's a fellow by the name of Lee O'Hare, and I don't talk to Lee much anymore since I've left Christianity, but Lee was a very strong inclusionist teacher, and Lee would say some things, and when he would say them, they absolutely challenged me as a traditional Christian preacher. But when I really stopped to listen and to consider, to weigh what he said versus what I knew, I found his information to be superior. Now, last thing before I go, this glass, is it half empty or half full? Put that in the chat. Is it half empty or half full? And I'm here to tell you that this glass is completely full. Why? Because it's half full of wine, but it's also, the remainder of it is filled with air. And air is a medium, but the wine happens to be a superior medium. So when I put the wine in the glass, it displaces the air. And so there is no longer as much air in the glass as it was before. Why? Because the wine is the superior medium. So, with that being said, there are some things that come into your life that are wine and not air. So, with that being said, nobody's checking in, nobody's clicking the link to join in. So, with that, I'm going to say thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Be happy, be well, and be filled with peace. Talk to you soon. Oh, Sunday. Oh, and don't forget, make sure you're back next Friday. Phreology Friday will be back in the saddle. Aaron will be back, and we'll be back, and we're going to do that thing. And then again on Sunday morning, Forward Live, the regular podcast, broadcast, live stream, whatever you want to call it, that'll be on as well. So that's it. Again, thank you for joining, and peace and hair grease.